The Elgin Area Historical Society was incorporated in 1961 as a nonprofit organization whose mission was to preserve and share Elgin's rich history. Local historian and author Bill Briska is the current treasurer and a long-standing member of the Historical Society.
By 1960, history in Elgin was at a turning point. A lot of the original members of the Old Settlers Association, which were a group of nostalgic-oriented people interested in the stories of the original pioneers from the 19th and early 20th century, had passed on. But there was a good cadre of local historians, educators, authors, novelists, and other people interested in preserving the city's history and legacy and bringing it forward for generations to come. Madeline Waggoner is credited with founding the Historical Society. She, along with Hazel Bell Perry, who was a graduate from Northwestern and a journalist in writing columns on local history in the local papers. Leroy Morning, a history instructor at Abbott High School. Of course, Mike Elft, and a number of other people at the time were interested in creating a historical society which would provide a formal structure for historical preservation and interpretation in the years going forward. In late 1960, a planning committee got together with the idea of forming an historical society. In January of '61, they incorporated as a not-for-profit, they elected officers, and they began to work on a series of goals and objectives. The Historical Society began to accumulate artifacts and documents, photographs, and three-dimensional objects related to the local history. And they were beginning to bring these things together, and their collection was growing and growing, but they really had no storage space. The Gale Borden Public Library had let them use a portion of the basement. Other items were stored in people's houses and around town in various locations. The process of beginning to catalog and organize this stuff led to the idea that some of it should be put out on display as part of an effort, along with publications, to educate the community about the historical resources in Elgin. That momentum, that interest, kind of carried the society along as a project throughout the 60s. They really did not have the location in mind, nor the resources. It wasn't until Elgin Academy abandoned Old Main in 1969 that people began to look at the building not as a classroom building any longer, but actually a structure that could be reused, readapted as a historical museum. The story of the acquisition and renovation of Old Main is really a story that goes beyond the Historical Society. There were just enough influential Elgin businessmen and community leaders who were committed to the project to make it happen. There was just enough political support to get the city council to agree to eventually take ownership of the building. There was just enough in private donations to bring the building through a series of stages of renovation and rehabilitation. This effort took place beginning in the 1976 as a Bicentennial Project and continuing all the way through opening of the first floor as a museum in 1987. At the same time that there was a growing public interest in preserving this building, a visible public building, there was also a growing movement within the neighborhoods, primarily on the east side of Elgin, for historic preservation of individual houses and homes. That led to the founding of an organization called the East Side Neighbors in '74. In '79, the Gifford Park Association was formed, and their focus was on a little bit smaller geographic area where they could have a direct impact on that small community around Gifford Park, and then the larger area which became the Elgin Historic District in 1981. GPA, along with other community groups such as the Rotary and other volunteer associations and Kiwanis and that, they contributed a lot of manpower and money to bringing the building to the first stage of renovation. You know, in many ways, Elgin's preservation efforts go back to this building and to the surrounding neighborhood here. In the late 1970s, Old Main was boarded up, smoke and water damage from a fire. Doors had been added and windows had been bricked in. Fire escapes had been added to the facade. The whole building was a mess. A lot of people thought it was beyond redemption.
It was a building that many people felt should be torn down. In 1911, lightning struck the building. The cupola, which is the symbol really of this building and is used in many of the symbols in Elgin, fell through the building, and the bell that was in the cupola fell through the building. So, and it was never restored. The building from that time forward had a flat roof.
Well, the restoration is really a partnership between the City of Elgin, the Elgin Academy, the Historical Society, and several corporate sponsors who put up some of the money to help bring the building back. Burnich & Castle, a local architectural firm, was involved right from the beginning with the exterior renovation of the building, and then they provided expertise through the entire interior renovation as well.
The cupola was manufactured in Houston, Texas. It was brought here on flatbed trucks and in parts, and assembled to the north of the building. When I looked at it, because the base was something like 40 feet wide, I thought I had made a mistake. I thought I had made the scale twice as big as that it really was supposed to be. So I was terrified. I saw it on the ground, I saw what size it was, I thought, it's twice as big. So, and other people were saying, it's not right, it won't work, so forth and so on. Well, they lifted it onto the building, and I have many wonderful pictures of them lifting it by crane up onto the building, and of course, it was the right scale. But sitting on the ground, 40 feet wide, is a pretty big element of architecture. Sitting on the roof, on the third floor, it fits perfectly.
Today, the museum's more than just a collection of artifacts. It really is a place that tells a story. The first two floors are concerned with permanent exhibits that follow Elgin's development from the very first settlers all the way up through the 1970s and a little beyond, and a number of rotating exhibits which highlight areas of special interest to the city.